The Visitors Who Came to Stay. Annalena McAfee, illustrated by Anthony Browne, Walker Books. Katie and her dad lived alone together in a house by the sea. It was a big house, so Katie had a playroom where her toys slept, as well as her own bedroom. Even their cat, had a room to himself. Well, it was more of a large cupboard really, but was very proud of it. Every evening they would watch TV together, and then Dad and Katie took turns to read to each other before bed. Dad's favorite story was just William, because that was his name. Katie's favorite was what Katie did next. Each morning, Dad got Katie off to school and made her packed lunch. Cheese sandwiches and an apple on Mondays and Fridays, ham sandwiches and an orange on Tuesday and Thursday, and peanut butter sandwiches and a banana on Wednesday. He made a breakfast for Katie, and Katie put out breakfast for her. A runny boiled egg for Katie, and tinned rabbit with added vitamins for her. Weekends with Dad were the most fun. Katie made Dad's breakfast, a bowl of cereal and a cup of coffee. Dad took his turn to feed her. After breakfast, they would walk through the park, and Katie would sit on the roundabout. Dad pushed her so hard that she felt giddy when she got off and pretended to be drunk all the way to the beach. And they would sit quietly. Sometimes Katie went to see her mom, who lived in another town. She would pack her overnight bag with a night tie, a brush, a toothbrush, a change of clothes, and tag. Then on Fridays, after school, she and Dad would catch a train which took them to the big bustling station in Mom's town. Outside Mom's flat, Katie would kiss Dad goodbye, then stand on tiptoes and press the chimney doorbell. On Sundays after tea, Dad would collect Katie and bring her home. But apart from those occasional weekends with Mom, Katie spent most of her time with Dad, and she liked it that way. And one day things changed. Dad brought home a new friend. Katie and her dad weren't alone anymore. "This is Mary," he said. Mary had the widest smile Katie had ever seen. "And this is Sean." "Like a sweet?" asked Sean. Katie, who never usually ate sweets between meals because Dad said it spoiled her appetite, was too polite to refuse. "Yitch!" It was hot. She spat it into her pan. It looked like a sweet, but tasted just like a vindaloo curry that Dad had let her try once. Sean was grinning now, a grin nearly as wide as Mary's. "It's a jog sweet," he explained. "Very funny, I don't think," said Katie. Soon, Sean and Mary became regular visitors, and Katie had to put up with lots of Sean's jokes. He left the soap that turned your face black in the bathroom, brought rubber snakes and spiders, and pushed sugar lumps that turned into thick blobs of foam in Dad's tea. "Very funny, I don't think," said Katie. Earl was not particularly impressed by the visitor either, especially not by Scrub, Sean and Mary's mongrel. Only Dad seemed to be pleased every time Sean and Mary came to visit. Weekends changed. The visitor would join in Dad's walk with Katie, and they would go to the fun fair. They ate candy floss and had to shut out to make themselves heard over the blaring pop music and the squeals and shrieks coming from the watcher and the ghost train. One weekend, Sean and Mary came to stay. Mary carried an old straw picnic hamper crammed full of cloth, and Sean had a battered dollpool bag. Sean was to sleep in the spare bed in Katie's playroom. Scrub made herself at home in Earth's room. Suddenly, Katie and Dad's big house seemed small. Mary seemed to have more clothes than a dress shop. Flower print dresses, striped skirts, spotted blouses, multicolored jumpers, snakeskin boots, silver slipper, ballet shoes, smartly colored berets, and a big straw hat with pink felt flower. They filled Dad's wardrobe. As for Sean, he pulled so many tricks out of his bag you would have thought he was a conjurer. There was sneezing powder, itching powder, a rubber fried egg, and a monster's hand with warts. Very funny, I don't think, said Katie. Sean's jokes and Mary's clothes seemed to fill the house. Sometimes Katie felt that she was the visitor, not them. Everything had changed. Mary helped to make Katie's packed lunch every morning, and she always got it wrong. She made a peanut butter sandwich on Mondays instead of Wednesday, and gave her a pear and a chocolate biscuit instead of a banana. Mary helped Dad make breakfast, and she seemed to use every pot, pan, and plate. There was always a huge pile of dirty dishes in the sink and on the draining board. She made fried eggs with black frills instead of proper boiled eggs. Weekends weren't like weekends anymore. Mary and Sean couldn't just take a simple walk to the beach like Katie and Dad. They seemed to bring half the house with them. There would be enough food to feed nearly everyone on the beach. Bottles of lemonade, wine, a glass of coffee, 4 towels, a hat, books, suntan oil, a bucket and spade, a tablecloth, and at least one joke for Sean. On the way, they stopped off at the amusement arcade and feed pennies into the fruit machines. Then Mary would insist that they all have ice cream. On the beach, Mary wouldn't sit still but would chat and laugh with Dad. Dad, do you see what I see? Asked Katie, but Dad didn't hear. Often, Katie found it a relief to get home and snatch some piece of syrup with her toys. But even then, Sean would come in and want to play with her. What on earth is that? Katie asked as he produced a small rubber cushion from his bag. It's a whoopee cushion, Sean explained. You blow it up and leave it on a chair. When someone sits on it, it makes the loudest noise you've ever heard. He demonstrated by forcing air out of the cushion with his hand. Katie blushed. He was right. It was the loudest sound imaginable. Katie went to tell Dad, but he was in a hurry to go out with Mary. Mrs. Murray had come round to look after Sean and Katie. She was an old babysitter who always put children to bed early so she could watch television. Why can't I come too? Katie asked Dad. It's only for grown-ups, he said with his arm round Mary. Dad just didn't seem to be the same Dad anymore. Katie was fed up. She didn't like sharing her house, her garden, her toys, her walks, and her meals. She didn't like sharing her dad, and one day she told him so. The next morning, when Katie went downstairs for breakfast, she sensed that something strange has happened. The house seemed quiet and empty. Sean and Mary were standing in the hall with their bags packed. They were leaving. They kissed Katie and Dad goodbye and shut the front door behind them. Katie sighed with relief and leaned heavily against the front door. Whew, she said, looking at Dad. It's nice to have the house to ourselves again. It was good to have Dad get her off to school alone each day and to read together and play together, just the two of them. Katie was glad they had their old weekends back to themselves. Soon it was just like the old time, well, almost. Earl seemed delighted to have his room back too. Only Dad seemed a little quieter and more thoughtful than usual. Gradually, Katie and Dad slipped back into their familiar routine. But one night, Katie got an odd feeling that something was not quite right. She was playing with her toys in the playroom when she suddenly felt something was missing. She checked all her toys, but they were all there. Then she looked in every room to see if she could find a clue to what was missing. Still no luck. As she watched television that night with Dad, she couldn't stop thinking about it. What on earth was it that she'd lost? It wasn't until the next day when Dad suggested, "How about paying Sean and Mary a visit?" that Katie realized what she'd been missing. Now she thought about it, life with the visitor hadn't been so bad. She missed Sean's jokes, especially the whoopee cushion that he'd left for Mrs. Murray to sit on one night when she was babysitting. Katie missed Mary's smile, and her clothes had been particularly useful for dressing up. There was, after all, a limit to the amount of dressing up you could do with Daddy's old shirt and a few ties. Katie realized that she didn't mind sharing Dad or her house or her toys or her walks if she could share Sean and Mary too. "Yes," said Katie, "let's visit Sean and Mary." But as they walked up the garden path to Sean and Mary's house, Katie made sure she had a surprise in store for Sean. She was going to take his picture with a very special camera, bought that morning from a junk shop. "Smile, please," she would say before pressing the button. It would squirt a jet of water right between Sean's eyes. She couldn't wait to see his face.